Well, we are live yet again for another conversation, and it's an honor and pleasure to have two amazing personalities. Let me now introduce our panelists. But before that, I wanted to give a very precise idea what we have been doing in our other contest. If you have not enrolled yet, go check out our stories on Instagram. Pepper Contest has been posting certain questions. You can go fill the questions, write the answers, and win amazing vouchers, express giveaway for you. Amazon vouchers worth 5,000 rupees and more. Go check out the contest. Let's get started with, yes, of course, Kishan and Mr. Baljit. All the best, guys, and it's your time.
Hey, thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for the good energy ball that came into the session across. But yeah, Baljit, I think first of all, pleasure to be hosting you. All thanks to you for having accepted to be a part of the entire Solstice thing today. Overall,
Pleasure is mine. Thank you
uh,
for having me over.
no, great. And for the audience over here, guys, Baljit has been the silent runner behind a lot of content that we as Indians, probably more to the Bharat that we say today, consumed. Has worked with some of the top-notch celebrities that we know today. Has been a guiding mentor for a lot of them across, and definitely a pleasure to be hosting you, especially for the topic different screens, different content. First of all, let me give you some perspective what different screens for us mean. Basically, different screens for us. I mean, I love theater. By the way, I personally love theater, and I've seen theater. Then I've seen the movie theater, of course, and then I've also seen the OTT of things. And Baljit, I think you have seen them grow together. Like we have just seen them as different mediums, but you've actually seen the journey grow from one platform to another. My first question to you, Baljit, over here would be one, how do you think, particularly, cinema content has adapted to the changing demands of consumers overall in a post pandemic world? And let's start the story fronts back all throughout. So let's start with the post pandemic world, the entire scenario changed. But love to know your thoughts on how was it for you, particularly, and how do you think the industry adapted to the growing needs of the consumers?
Sure. Firstly, thank you for actually having me over because it's quite a pleasure to interact with, especially people with having different point of views, and those deliberations really are exciting. From a post-pandemic view, we always have seen content, and cinema specifically has been spoken in terms of, this is a genre which is going to be a thriller genre. This is going to be a drama genre. This is going to be a larger than life portrayal of canvas on cinema. Those are the conversations that we were having earlier in the pre-pandemic world. But now we also have a very technical term which is being used very often now. It's called, is it theatrical or is it direct to digital? So now what is
Mm-hmm.
happening is, in every conversation, this is one of the very important filter which is getting applied, which in the pre-pandemic world was not actually getting applied. Now, what exactly
Mm-hmm.
is theatrical and what is direct to digital? When we are talking about a film which essentially is going to garner a certain amount of massy uh, numbers in terms of footfall at the theaters. Earlier, the conversations were ki, are a cinema hall, single multiplex, mein what kind of footfall will happen, or what kind of footfall will happen in a single cinema scenario. But now we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about even before the theatrical, even the digital to direct to digital kind of context, where we talk about how an urban film may be differentiating itself, will be marketing itself, and what are the expected numbers thereof. When we talk about
Right.
a larger than life portrayal on a canvas, which is essentially most of the South Indian films that you've seen right now, a dub film is getting the kind of opening which possibly was unheard of before, right? In the
Right.
pre-pandemic scenario. So things have changed, and now a big part which you're talking about is the experience part of it. People have been
Right.
cocooned in their households for way too long, and they have to step out. If they have to step out, they have to step out for an experience which comes along with the promise of a cinema. So in the post-pandemic
Yes.
world, as I would say it, there is going to be a direct to digital promise, and from the direct to digital promise, if you cross over to a theatrical experience, it's going to be the experience of a cinema. And now cinema does not have only Hindi or English content. It is across a global content, as long as it gives me a trip which is going to warrant me entertainment on a larger format, because I'm overcompensating for being cocooned in 3 years for 3 years inside my house.
No, that is absolutely amazing, and I mean, definitely. I mean, you been there in the entire journey for a brand like Alt Balaji all throughout. I think you have seen it much closer than what we all do. I mean, we saw what you actually made. basically.
Hmm.
Just wanting to understand from that those thoughts, when you also chose different topics on which, when you directed different shows, different films, uh, how does that entire philosophy, I would say, or the entire psychology, particularly either of it, whatever best you want to call it, works? How do you know what a consumer mind actually wants? And just trying to understand from this lens, asking it very layman terms, when you make a show, how do you know is the show going to be successful or not? I mean,
Yeah.
very very blunt term, but yeah.
Yeah, so right now, see, there were always a traditional ways of saying कि consumer research कर लेते हैं,
Huh?
which is the pre corporate scenario that we were all used to as marketers. कि let's back
Right.
it up with the consumer research, and if the consumer says yes, let's go ahead with it. But right now, in the
Hmm.
direct to digital scenario, you have to remember two things. First of all, it's an individual screen. You're talking about
Right.
a film or a cinema or actually a content which is going to be seen on a mobile film, on a mobile phone, which is an individual viewing. First of all, let's differentiate between the three screens right now. We're talking about
Right.
a cinema experience, which is community viewing. There is a digital content, which is going to be single screen, personal viewing, and there is a television screen, which is a family viewing. Now, is
Right.
there going to be one parameter which is going to say that all of it is going to be backed with consumer research? No, because
Hmm.
we are talking about as creators with something called as instinct, right? Typically
Right.
the instinct is going to be a big enabler for most of the content creators to take the plunge. Now, how does the
Right.
instinct work? When I speak about somebody like an Ekta Kapoor who works with an instinct for the shows, whether she did it for television, she talks
Hmm.
about the common denominator of people who are watching content across the length and breadth of the country, which is for family viewing, which is television, which is the case series that we speak about, right? Which we
Right.
talk about when we come to Old Balaji. The content that Old Balaji does is very different from the content that Balaji did for television, right? Which had his
Makes
own
sense.
distinct identity.
Right.
Similarly, when the same Balaji would do a film, it'll be a very different kind of a film, which is going to be coming from the same so-called umbrella, parent umbrella, but the content will be very different if it is television, whether it's film or whether it is digital, right? Now, what does it take to decide as content creator ये चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा? Nothing
Right.
nothing can warrant it, right? The biggest of films have actually had the biggest of duds in terms of the footfalls which have happened, and the most surprising of the films also we have witnessed in terms of the kind of footfalls they've had, right?
Hmm.
If I remember a couple of years ago, there was this film which came out of nowhere called Stree Tum
Yeah.
Kalana.
Uh,
Who would expect a mixed genre in terms of
right.
a comedy coupled with a humor film becoming a cult film in its own form, right? Then you
Right.
had multiple other films to follow suit called Bareli Ki Barfi, you had Shubmangal Savdhan. Out of nowhere, Ayushman Khurrana became the face of social issues that we are talking about, right? And these
Yeah.
were coming in films which were not these big films which were backed by stars, right? But that was the revolution that we saw in content, right? If you come back closer back into cinema, from cinema to digital, direct to digital, the biggest phenomena that you've noticed, the biggest phenomena, if you ask it, no person says that my content is the best content available for digital. Everybody is saying, what are you watching? I am watching A, B, and C. I am watching Mirzapur. I am watching Sacred Games. Okay, okay. No, no, but you know what? Guess what? Hold on. I am not watching Mirzapur and Sacred Game. I am watching the TVF shows. Good luck. I'm watching Panchayat. I'm watching pictures, right? Oh, no. Hold on. There are people who are watching 4 more shots, please. There are people who are watching. So
Yeah.
essentially, across the length and the breadth of the kind of enabling that digital has done, that you don't need to have one size fits all kind of a scenario, and every content has an audience waiting for it to be appealing it to.
No, very very interesting. I mean, thank you so much for kind of telling that, because we being consumers at the end of it don't really see the broader world. We usually like to look at what we consume and like to generalize that across, but this gives a very broad perspective. uh, Wanting to understand, Baljit, from a very creative perspective, right? What do you think has been the biggest difference? Because you've worked in all the three segments, that is
Hmm.
cinema, TV, and OTT,
Hmm.
basically. What do you think have been the key differences from a very creative angle of
Yes.
saying ki yaar, and actually I have myself seen, I'm not name the film or the show, but I've always thought कि यार ये अगर है ना मूवी थिएटर में आती तो नहीं चलती, बट
Hmm.
ओटीटी पे चल गई बहुत सी
Hmm.
बार ऐसे. It's a personal perspective, might be right, might be wrong, but wanting to understand how does a creative angle change with different channels of cinema, silver screen, that's TV and OTT all throughout.
Yeah, yes. So right now, the first important thing is the story itself. Now, what is the
Okay.
story? If the story is appealing to the lady of the house, who we call it in our world called the protagonist. Now,
Hmm.
if the film is going to be, I'll give you a very simple example again. Pick up a
Hmm.
film like Sholay. Okay, if
Hmm.
Sholay were to come on television, you will pick up the entire narrative from the voice and the lens of one single protagonist, which in this case could be Basanti. Okay,
Right.
wherein how would Basanti assume, or how would a female protagonist with Jaya Bachchan ji could be the lens in which the entire television content, from a creative point of view, will be at least enabled, and you may have everybody else as a background. Those two people or one of them could be the lead protagonist, which is going to appeal to a television audience. Basanti क्या सोचती है, जया जी क्या सोचती है, and then Jay Viru will become the secondary artist there. However, when you take the same thing from a digital point of view, you will say, "Arey, no, 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 no. It's never about one person. It's always an ensemble. I need to talk
Right.
about different characters. Everybody needs to have an episode given to themselves, or in every episode, multiple layers will be there so that ensemble will work. Now, sometimes Jay
Right.
will have an upper hand, sometimes Viru will have an upper hand, sometimes Basanti will have an upper hand, and you will
Right.
end every episode on a cliffhanger, which means every episode will be a film and you're fighting with sleep every time a person is watching an episode. Are रात के 12 बज गए हैं, there are three more episodes to watch. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me pick up a very, very important turning point in an episode and make that as the last 3 seconds or 3 minutes of the episode, so that they watch then one more episode, which we call it binge watching, right? So now in a
Right.
digital format, you will use different ensemble casts to create that binge watching habit. But when you talk about the
Right.
same thing now in a 90-minute or a 120-minute from cinema point of view, you will talk about, oh God, we will try to mount the can. We'll try to do mounting. We will give an experience to people which is going to be a cinema scope experience, which is how they we call it. The scope of the creative person is going to be a cinema experience that we're talking about here. So the same film from a television perspective becomes a different content, and from a digital content it becomes a different person, and from a cinema we are talking about a mounting which is larger than life, so the person forgets everything else, and now we're taking literally on a jolly ride. So from a creative point of view, this is the differentiator, I would call it, and this is how a creative person will work backwards with this team to make that happen.
No, very interesting, and thanks for helping us with this. Uh, got to understand also about the entire going to cinema kind of an angle today. I think with the in the post-pandemic world, uh, I mean, pandemics definitely took a hit. We all know how the entire industry had to suffer, particularly from a more cinema and theater-led angle. But wanting to understand today, Baljit, what do you think is there in the mind of a consumer that they prefer going to the cinema still? I mean, what is it like, and then how do you define saying ki yaar, a lot of films we have seen which are going to come in cinema came on OTT, got launched over there. Now we see a different trend which was altogether unexpected. I think at least 3 years ago, which was film getting launched on day one, film coming on OTT on day 10th or day 15th in that case. Now, but people still preferring to go for that experience across. Just trying to understand how do you think is that experience crafted for an individual after going to a theater?
So right now, let's take a little bit of a perspective here.
Hmm.
Cinema will never go out of fashion or out of trend, right? Even back in Europe, some of the biggest content and biggest content in terms of cinema has come during the war times, right? You're talking about how even middle of the war, people would go and see a film, either pre-war, post-war, and a lot of good content, which is so-called the Criterion collection in terms of the cult films, actually came in during the war films back in the Europe. Coming back home,
Hmm.
closer home, we are talking about two films which have now become, from the post-pandemic scenario, a super hit film, right? On one end
Hmm.
is a very realistic portrayal called Kashmir Files. Okay. On the
Yes.
other spectrum, we're talking about Bhul Bhulaiya, which is a second season franchise, and those two films are both experience which are coming from Hindi content point of view. But there are
Okay.
other regional content which is also found inroads in terms of RRR, in terms of Pushpa, in terms of KGF season chapter 2 for that matter, right? Now, all these experiences are talking about only one thing, that nothing is going to be going out of fashion. As long as you give me a reason to enter a cinema hall wherein what we call in our internal fraternity called community viewing. When a person wants to come to a theater to watch Bhool Bhulaiya, they want to laugh together. When you are
Right.
when you're actually crackling together with your girlfriend or with your college mates or with some people that you've come across to see a film with, it's a community experience that is going to make that experience good for you. Similarly, if you see a very realistic portrayal of it, look at something like Kashmir Files. It was not a very entertaining experience, but look at the kind of honest portrayal that was there, wherein the
Yeah.
youth was at the one third of Kashmir Files was actually a film which is about youth, people who are discussing about what is about doing what do you call singing together, what is it about
Yeah.
natak natanki together, talking about the issue that the state was grappling with. And youth was a very important part of the experience that Kashmir Files brought into this particular thing, right? And both the experiences, Kashmir Files contrast with RRR experiences, both end of the spectrum, the audiences thoroughly enjoyed them, and they actually rewarded the content creators with the kind of nod that they gave it ki, "Arey, good content will give you footfalls," right? However, there are
Right.
certain content which never got an opening. Okay, now why some content is working and why some content is not working, we can never predict the trend. But what is coming across in the post-pandemic thing, that I have been cocooned for 3 years inside my house. If you give me a promise that step out of your house and I'm going to spend close to about 1200 rupees to 1500 rupees for an experience which is including the popcorn, let the experience be worth for me. And audiences now, even after the first day first show, not even they just, it's not about, you don't even need to wait for the box office numbers to come. Instagram and Twitter is already abound with an individual viewing, an
Right.
experience that they have spoken about. They don't wait for critics
Yes.
review. Individuals are
Yeah.
now posting, and people are forwarding, re-forwarding, reposting, and that's the post-pandemic behavior that is now determining whether the film is going to be successful or not.
No, I think we all saw that for Brahmastra particularly. I mean the amount of noise at least it made. I can
Hmm.
definitely say on the search engine optimization front, it had to rank up. Now, anytime I search Brahmastra, it will not tell the god's weapon, but it will gonna show my film up in that
Hmm.
case. But we all saw that social listening across. Baljit, bringing a very different angle to this entire conversation. Now we spoke about the entire core content part that you were creating. You've been in the OTT space for a while, and the only way to monetize in the OTT space is doing a lot of brand integrations in the kind of shows that you make. It's one of the largest means of revenue for all the OTT players today. That's the way they make more content for us to consume, of course. Wanting to understand, when as a director you did these films, one, how does an inventory basically in an entire film gets created for different brands that come in picture overall? And secondly, also wanting to understand, how does that, I mean, what is the usual philosophy? Like, sometimes, after having watched some of the lower grade shows or lower grade channel shows, we see a lot of brand integrations getting pushed through, saying कि जरूरत नहीं है तो भी वो लगाना पड़ा क्योंकि पैसा नहीं आ रहा था, for sure, after looking at those brands. Just wanting to understand, what do you think, how our inventory is, one, created, second, how our inventory is optimized to work in the script of the show? We are asking a very technical stuff over here because we want to understand, is the script first made or is the brand first taken in and then the script made? How is the usual thought over there?
It's a very, very complex way we things work out, and it's not going to be one answer which is going to cover the entire
Yeah,
diaspora
of
here.
course.
Let's break this into three parts first. First of all,
Okay.
what kind of content have you created? Have you created what we call an AWOT show or an SWOT show? Now, what is
Hmm.
AWOT show and what is SWOT show? AWOT show is free to air. SWOT show
Okay.
is subscriber driven, which means whether
Okay.
your consumers are going to be paying for watching the content or is it going to be free for air. The moment you
Right.
talk about somebody for free to air, it needs to be monetized and it needs to be supported by brands investing in that content. Either it is
Right.
going to be in-show integration or is it going to be advertising which is going to be coming in. So if you're
Coming
watching,
in.
let's say, an ashram on MX player, because it's
Uh-huh.
going to be something which is available to you for an experience, either you can take a gold experience by taking a subscriber and it's going to be without any ad, or it is going to be free to air, and after regular intervals you'll be in middle of a show or in the middle of a scene, you may get an ad there. Okay, that is in your face. However, what we call is product placement within the same scenario. Some of the content in, I think, erstwhile television also, you notice, have become synonymous with the brands. At no point of time you can think about quiz contest. You say Bonvita quiz contest, right? When you talk about
Hmm.
marathon, we are talking about Standard Chartered Marathon. Now these have
Hmm.
become Coke Studio. You cannot think about a music thing without the brand at a fundamental level being spoken about, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
these are what we construct as a second part, called those were the FPCs, which is programming content, which has been funded from a brand already coming on board at the inception stage itself. I will want
Got
my
it.
content to be commissioned basis what a brand is coming as a discussion in terms of fitment. I see that Bonvita is going to be for people who are going to be quiz masters, which is essentially the TG we are talking about. Hence, Bonvita quiz contest becomes an immediate one for me to associate with. Similarly, if you go back into the Big Boss scenario, you see a lot of product placements which are either passive, somebody's taking a shower and you see a brand at the back of it, or if you see nowadays, even in content wherein lyrics actually already have ki Jhandu Balm can be part of my content, which is essentially I have actually put into my song itself a brand, which is when I'm humming it, manifold times it's going to be reminding me of the brand that I'm associated with, right? Now, this essentially there's no one single way to judge it, no, not one
Hmm.
single way to look at it. But from an OTT point of view, remember, at least I would say it very simply, A word and S word, which means free
Hmm.
to air or subscriber base. And within the content, do I want a passive brand integration or do I want an active brand integration? If somebody is having in a film like Darlings, which is the Alia Bhatt film which happened, there were some
Right.
brands which were put very passively within the content, and you saw the protagonist using them. But in some of the films which are very very pronounced, you actually talk about "ये खाओगे तो नींद आ जाएगी," which is a very active pronouncement that a protagonist or a character of the
Yeah.
film does, right? That's also happening from the inception stage itself. Ki how do people want to monetize their existing cost of the content which gets subsidized by a brand coming on board? So there's no one
Right.
single easy answer, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
actually.
But at least we got the cover of the web basically of that entire complex thing. We got to understand at least what are the thought process you got to go in. Now I can, like, after having told this, I can definitely figure out what could more inventories look like. There could be a protagonist saying about it. There could be a shop banner that could be put across when we are shooting the show. From there, I mean, just trying to kind of think through. But yeah, yeah, this is good perspective.
Yeah, as you sometimes you never know that a person who's walking into a branch for a bank branch for a loan, suddenly you see the banner of a brand there. You don't realize
Ah,
that actually it's an active integration which has already happened. The moment a
yes.
person says, "Ha sir, ho jayega," what if that actually is the tagline of the bank which has paid couple of crores to be part of that scene?
Ah. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. We don't realize it. Sometimes we do because having come, like I do now, because I've come from this industry as a whole. So now I at least able to figure out. But yeah, very
Hmm.
very interesting part to things. And in fact, the older films that we used to see, now when we watch it again,
Hmm.
those times it was not too subtle. Basically, they
Huh.
had to kind of force it through, and now we get to see acha Colgate dikhaya, yeah, SBI dikhaya, those kind of
Hmm.
things across. But very very interesting to
But
know.
what is not very interesting is the fight you pick up with a marketeer. A content person
Uh,
से मेरी स्क्रिप्ट के ऊपर तुम ज्यादा ब्रांड इंटीग्रेशन मत करना, बिकॉज मेरी स्क्रिप्ट खराब हो जाएगी. मार्केटियर सेज, अरे मैं ही पैसे देता हूँ तो तुम्हारी स्क्रिप्ट का क्या? So basically it's a war, right? You are
it's
almost in
a
a
word.
war zone trying to negotiate how much he's going to come ahead and how much you're going to go back.
No, no, no. Super, super interesting. And completely can imagine what might be happening over there. But super Baljit, I think one last question from my end, and just in the interest of time, a lot of things to catch up. You're not able to cover everything across, but one last thing, right? After having done all of these things, right from shows to cinema to theater to now starting your own studios across overall, uh, what has been that one thing that has stayed throughout? I mean, I'm asking a very philosophical gyan question of general overall, but just wanting to understand what is that one itch that has always kept you intact with saying, hey, this is the best content we need to create and this is gonna stay alive throughout. What's that one thing like for you?
I think one important thing as content creators for me particularly is honesty. If I'm
Hmm.
going to be very honest with the consumer in terms of the content, that honesty is going to speak through it. Even if
Hmm.
I'm actually creating a content which possibly is the least minimal budget available to create a content, as long as
Right.
you're honest with the vibe of the content, it is going to stay. When you look at a homegrown platform that we were talking about, I worked with Alt Balaji for the longest period of time, right? those the homegrown platforms generally do not have the budgets that some of the biggies have, right? A biggie will
Right.
launch 3 shows in a year, and we will launch 30 in a year as All Wala Ki.
Right.
But the honesty with which it strikes a chord with the consumer, I'm not saying the
Mhm.
biggies don't have an honest one. Biggies also have an honest conversation with the consumer, but a content which is going to get differentiated, whether a big content on a big platform or a big content on a small platform or a small content on a small platform, as long as it's told with honesty, it is definitely going to strike a chord with the consumer. And that is what something as content creator I have remembered is going to be the mantra, not necessarily for success, but a mantra for continuity of business. You're going to be continuously to be in business as long as you're
Yeah.
honest with your content.
No, that is absolutely helpful, and I think that one word hooks us all, saying honesty. I mean, the genuineness which the content is created, being extremely honest to what we are doing, what we're creating, and how close. I mean, it has to be extremely natural. We all saw the best of the films that we remember, like a Gangs of Wasipur or something. Why? Because it was relatable. Those
Mhm.
scenarios were relatable in general, and
Mhm.
that's the kind of honesty that we usually see. But thank you so much. It's been amazing to host you. Definitely, thank you so much for this session. But yeah, I think thanks for this. Over to Gaurav, you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me over. It was good. It was great.
Well, really thankful for such lovely conversation. Well, Bollywood or anything which is related to content or movies is very interesting, and it puts a different anxiety and excitement in all the people who are in the chat. If you can just spare a minute, there were few questions which I saw in the chat, and I would like to put forward at least one or two questions if the time allows.
Great. Let
Ishu.
me do one thing. I'll ask a couple of those. Basically,
Yeah,
I'll
that
ask those,
works.
Baljit, for you. Baljit, the audience is saying basically, uh, like how opera can't be enjoyed in a digital format. Basically, do you think there will soon be some segmentation of the contents that will be exclusive to a type of screen all throughout? I mean, do you see just not films but any different segments of content coming up from very digital first to a live audience kind of a show? What do you think about the same?
Yes, there will definitely be content which is going to be for the screen, an interactive content. Like Black Mirror had a film which is an interactive film only for a
Yeah.
digital, which came in terms of the cult thing, right? We also have
Right.
Closer Home now, a reality format, which is a Ranveer Singh kind of a reality non-fiction format, which is scripted reality, also
Right.
becoming very unique to the screen that is offering into. Similarly, there'll be many more experiments which are going to come in the future, and those experiments are going to define that how you will have an edge over the competitors that are actually also operating. Now digital is giving you that enabling the spirit and the enability, and eventually that's going to become a very massive task for people like us content creators, ki how
Right.
you are the first mover and you actually can reap the benefits of it later.
Superb. And I think one last question that Malvika asks in the
Yeah.
chat: can a good content be enough and be a one size fits all for all different screens? I mean, how often is that, and how sure is that?
So yes, there are very few content which is essentially for all screens and for all genres. But I will talk about again in going back to my example, films which have become cult films over a period of time have actually have have cut across all the screens. One such film which comes to my mind is Jab We Met. Now,
Hmm.
Right.
each time you see a switch on TV channel, and if Jab We Met is playing, you will definitely watch it. If Jab We
Yeah.
Met is on YouTube or in one of the apps that you have to have a membership of, you will sit and watch it. And the fact that Jab We Met is going to be something, even if you release in the theater right now, I am dead sure there is going to be a certain amount of audience which is still going to go and flock it. I am not
Yep.
here to plant what Jab We Met did to the audiences.
Sorry.
I think Baljit, you went on mute.
I'm saying this is not just Jab We Met. Content like DDLJ, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, some of the
Right.
films which Anurag Kashyap has done in the recent past, Queen for that matter, as long as it's an extension of my personality, which I'm seeing on a
Yeah.
celluloid as a story,
Right.
it is
Right.
going to cut across all the screens. It's never about ये digital film है और ये theatrical film है. It is my
Mhm.
film, it is my story, and I'll watch it on my mobile phone, and I will go to the theater and watch it, and I'll watch it on my TV screen with my family. So it's essentially content which essentially cuts across all the three screens is going to be given a status of cult, and that's how the differentiator of a content in the long run will actually be defined.
And it's also like how you define the characters and how affectionate you are towards the character you associate, you relate, and not only the larger than life movies, but content and character based movies also can, bring and win hearts. That's amazing. And so,
The way the moment the audience says कि ये मेरी कहानी है ना, it does not
yeah.
become Vikas Behal's kahani, it becomes my kahani. And that is what is going to cut across all the screens.
True.
Yes.
Perfect.
No, amazing. Thank you, Baljit. Thanks for this. I think thank you. We're a bit short of of time, but definitely looking forward to having like a larger session, of course, Baljit, with
Sure,
you for this
yes.
bit. And
Sure.
lovely.